Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Parent Education Series, which is sponsored by Konick and Associates. I am Dr. Lisa Konick, and I am a psychologist and founder of Konick and Associates. We are a group practice specializing in child and family behavioral health services with offices located in South Naperville and Orland Park. And this is the second segment of our anti-racism parenting series. Today I have with me Stacey Montgomery of Stacey M Design. Welcome, Stacey. I'm going to introduce Stacey. The purpose of our sessions are really to provide important information and resources to parents in our community. And I'm really delighted to have Stacey join us today. She is an active member of posting additional really important resources to families in the community as well. And I believe she and I have a shared passion in working to empower children to be more confident and to embrace diversity and uniqueness in their lives and in their families. So what I'd like to do is introduce Stacey. She's going to be speaking to us today about it's never too early to start teaching our children about race. Stacey is a mom, a published author, and an experienced illustrator. Long ago, Stacey discovered her passion for drawing and was determined to use her talent to create illustrations of kids that reflect the world in which we live. When kids see images that resemble themselves, they smile and they feel empowered. As a mom, Stacey has experienced the joy and pain of motherhood. She watched as her son as a smiling, exuberant elementary school boy ready to conquer the world. She then watched him transform into a sad, lonely middle and high school boy, and it seemed as if the world had conquered him. These experiences fueled Stacey's mission to help kids be comfortable in their own skins and to view others as unique yet integral parts of the community. In 2017, Stacey published What's Your Superpower?, the first of a series of guided journals designed to empower kids. In 2019, she created a social emotional learning program for elementary schools based on another journal, What is Different? Why Different is Awesome. Her unique curriculum helps kids to embrace their own differences and encourages them to accept differences in others. The goal of her program is to create a tolerant, inclusive school community. Stacey grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia and is a graduate of Columbia University in the city of New York. She now lives in Aurora with her husband and son. Welcome, Stacey, and I'm very delighted to have you join us today.
Thank you, and good afternoon. And I'm so happy to be here, and I thank Dr. Konick for inviting me. So today I am going to talk about strategies to teach our kids to be anti-racist. And it is based on a blog that I wrote that Dr. Konick referred to. It's never too early to start talking to our kids, teaching our kids about race. So we as parents are in a unique position to make things different. We are living in a country where there is a lot of racism, a lot of racial violence, a lot of racial intolerance. But we as parents, we are in a unique position to make things different. So as we all know, babies are not born racist. They aren't. But what we do as parents will make an impact on our children's actions and attitudes about race, from the time that they are very young and through adulthood. So it's never too early to teach our kids about race. Our kids are forming opinions about race very early in their lives. Soon after birth, show preferences for race. So if our goal is to have children who have healthy, informed views of race and to be actively anti-racist, I have 4 strategies. First of all, we must model an anti-racist attitude. So we as parents are our children's first and best teachers. What we say, the people with whom we socialize, and what we do all have an impact on our children's perspectives on race. So we really need to think about that. What are our views on race? How do we really feel about being racially tolerant and anti-racist? Not in a kind of abstract, philosophical sense, But in real life practice, how do we really feel about that? Because once we really are actively anti-racist, things may get a little bit more difficult, a lot less comfortable. Um, Many of us feel that we're not racist at all, but there are little things that we may do or say, subtle things, and maybe not so subtle things that may promote a racist attitude in our children and may show a lack of understanding as to what it really means to be anti-racist. So I have an example, and surprise, surprise, it comes from social media. This past weekend, a friend of mine of over 15 years posted something on Facebook. We're not close friends, but I've known her for 15 years. We have kids around the same age. And she's been a customer of mine, so I know her pretty well. But she posted something on Facebook that I found quite troubling. She made a comment that she found it hypocritical that the local government allowed protests, or whatever you want to call them, those are her words, not mine, and celebrations of Black culture, again, her words, not mine, but is not allowing 4th of July parades and celebrations of American culture. Her words, not mine. So I'm not commenting at all on the wisdom of the government's decision. That's not what this is all about. But what I'm commenting on is how she chose to voice her frustration, the words she chose to use. The words that she chose to use show that she does not see the history of African Americans in this country as American history, nor does she see the issues of racial intolerance and violence as a human issue. In her mind, these things are issues of Black culture. It's a Black problem. This attitude is a problem and demonstrates a lack of an anti-racist mentality. She could have voiced her frustrations or opinions on the government's decision using very, very different words and still made her point. So what does her choice of words say? We have to really think about our attitudes and our beliefs as parents. So now let's look at the issue of racial colorblindness. And I realized that Dr. Dubiel yesterday really touched on this a lot, but I'm going to mention it again because I think it's really a really critical issue.
I agree with you that I think a lot of people have the mistaken notion that they are doing the right thing by promoting a lack of racial attention.
Exactly. Some feel that if we teach our kids not to see race, they will not be racist. And if they declare, I don't see race, then they are not racist. But that reasoning is flawed because racism does not exist because people notice race. It exists because people choose to treat others differently, poorly because of race. It exists because people place different values on entire groups of people based on the color of their skin. And that is a problem. That's why racism exists. So we as parents need to take a look at ourselves in the mirror and confront our own racial bias and our own understanding of what racism is and our own beliefs about the systemic and institutional racism that does indeed exist. And, I'm not suggesting that everybody's a racist, but if we are going to raise anti-racist children, we need to take a moment to think about it and challenge ourselves and educate ourselves as to what it means to be an anti-racist and what the reality of institutional racism really means. The more we challenge racial bias, whether it's in ourselves or wherever we see it, the more our children will. So that's how we model anti-racist attitude. We first have to look at ourselves and then, make a decision that we're going to live anti-racist lives. So what comes out of our mouth, the people we socialize with, and the things we do, those all matter.
And Stacey, it's interesting when you're talking about some of these examples of perhaps maybe that falls into the category of a microaggression, what your friend posted without maybe really understanding how others might view that as hurtful and, minimizing or to some degree. I think the interesting dynamic with parents and kids right now is it depends on the developmental age of your child. So when we're talking about parenting kids to be anti-racist and anti-racism parenting, there's going to be a different interaction with elementary age children, for example, versus adolescents who are developing their own thinking that might be a little different from the values of their parents. And I'm actually having conversations with a lot of my teenage clients who are saying, it's frustrating to me that my grandmother or my parent is racist, and I don't know how to approach that with my parents. So it's really your teenagers are having a difficult time maybe managing their differences in opinion. How do they talk to your parents? And I think we need to be good listeners as parents as well for our older kids, because they have good views in many cases that might help us be better at calling ourselves out.
Correct. And that actually leads me into my second strategy, which is talk to your children. And as you mentioned, we need to talk to our children. We need to listen to our children. And we need to talk to our children starting at an early age, and the conversations need to be ongoing. So, so we need to initiate these conversations, because our children have more likely than not already formed opinions about race, because these opinions are informed by books, TV, movies, video games, social media, their friends, as you mentioned, their extended family, and school. So by speaking to our children, you can learn what they already know, and you can learn from them, and you can correct them when necessary. The point here is that if your goal is to raise anti-racist children, you must take active steps. You can't just sit back and expect it to happen. It might, but you need to be an active participant in this process. Being silent or passive just isn't enough. And you can be the most wonderfully, anti-racist person, but if you don't take an active part in ensuring that your child is anti-racist, you may be allowing the influence of others who may be very racist, and their perspectives may be very different than yours, and they may end up having a greater influence on your children than you do. So an active participant is really important. And the conversations, again, should not be a one-time thing. It should be an ongoing conversation. Yesterday, Dr. Dubiel mentioned how she has conversations with her kids literally every day, because every day there is an opportunity. So yes, there are natural opportunities all of the time. On the media, when there are issues of racial violence, of other racial intolerance, yes, that's a natural opportunity. But wait until there's something big that happens that consumes the media, that results in protests. There are things which happen every day in the media, which could lead to a natural conversation. There are events throughout the year. For example, a couple weeks ago, we celebrated Juneteenth. And, many of us had no idea what that holiday is all about. So that is an opportunity for everybody to learn and have a conversation. Other times, even the 4th of July, which is on Saturday, that's an opportunity, because a lot of people, as the woman I mentioned earlier, are comparing Juneteenth to the 4th of July. And why is that comparison being made? That's an opportunity for a conversation. And I can't stress enough the importance of having an ongoing dialogue with your child about race, because as your children get older, they will continue to hear perspectives on race from all over the place, the media, their friends, etc. And it's important for you to know what they are thinking, to learn from them, and to perhaps challenge them. And if they challenge you, listen to them. You have a conversation. So
Yeah, I think parents are very important teachers from the early stages, and we don't necessarily, a lot of our clients don't think of themselves. A lot of our families don't think of themselves as teachers, but you are your
Mm-hmm.
most important teacher. They're learning how to be, um, you're learning how to be in a relationship. They're learning how to, their values, or especially at the earlier ages, are coming directly from their family of origin. So I think there's probably a lot of opportunity just in your daily, every time you get together with extended family, there may be conversations that are had to talk about those types of topics, those issues.
And I can't tell you how many times that I've received, messages from parents over the last, month or so, saying, my my father is very racist, and or even my spouse, my husband, or all these people which surround their children, and they want their children to have relationships with extended family, but it's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
These individuals are influencing our children, and so I mean, Dr. Konick, in every part of our kids' life, we need to know what other people are saying, and we need to make sure that we teach them properly, regardless of what these other people are saying to them. So, and that's a lot about what I teach in my books about confidence. Kids have all these voices in their ears. We have to really understand that and empower them.
I think that I want to add to this before you move to your next topic, but the idea of what social media is flooding our children with as well. There's a lot of, in talking with clients this last month, for example, there's been a lot of insecurity and uncertainty because there's so many opposing messages that are being presented to our kids very rapidly through social media. And I think as a parent, it's really important to take the opportunity to know what your kids are seeing and viewing on social media, and be able to talk to them about how they're reconciling this conflicting information.
Exactly. Strategy number 3, take advantage of resources. So, there are many books, toys, movies, cartoons, television shows with racially diverse characters, with appropriate messaging. Um, some of you may be thinking, okay, my child is 1, my child is 2, 3, 4, 5. What type of conversation could I be having with a child this young? So, when your child is very, very young, less than a year old, 2 years old, the books that you show them, even the dolls, like for example, if you have a white doll or a doll of light skin, a doll of medium skin, and a doll of dark skin, you can talk about that. You can talk about, yes, these 3 dolls are different. Their skin is different. But what does that mean? It really means nothing. It means that their skin is different, but each one is beautiful. One is not better than the other. So these are the type of conversations you can have with the different toys that your very, very young children have. Make sure the books that you are purchasing do not have racist themes or stereotypes or tokenism and things like that. So you want books that if they have characters, people versus animals. Look for books that have racial diversity. Look for books that have African American protagonists. Look for books that celebrate African Americans and American history. So make sure that your library is well-rounded. It has some of everything. And, videos, movies. There are movies that are out that are wonderful, that teach a lot about race, such as, like, for example, Selma. That was a very, very a very great movie to initiate conversations. And we're headed into a voting season. Elections will happen in November. That's another point, that's a natural time to have conversations. So take advantage of these resources. And as you use these resources, don't simply give your child, here's a book or here's a couple of dolls, different skin colors. Use these resources to have conversations. And no one expects all parents to be experts on this subject. And we don't have all the answers. So it's okay if we are learning along with our children. It's okay to tell your children, I don't know. If you know what Juneteenth was a couple weeks ago and your kid asks you, it's okay. I don't know. Let's look that up. Let's talk about it together.
I think that's a very prudent point, that we are learning about things together, just in general as a parent, that you are able to say, let's research that together. What do you think about this topic? How are you feeling about this topic? How are you feeling about the character? How are you feeling about, some of these issues that come up? And I know that when we talk about resources, that's one of the things parents are feeling maybe short on, and we will continue to post those resources on our Facebook page. We will have them available on our website. And Stacey, would you share with us too, also at the end, how we can access some of those resources that you may have available?
Okay, of course. So yes, use the resources. We may not have all the answers, but there are an abundance of resources out there. And as Dr. Konick mentioned, I will share some of my resources at the end. So strategy number 4, hold your child's school accountable. And I have to tell you, this is a strategy that I have particularly strong feelings about. So our schools should be providing children with an anti-racist education. And we as parents must hold our schools accountable for doing this. So recently, within the last month or so, somebody shared on a post on my page that her child's teacher told the class sometime, during the school year, that there is no racism in this country. Racism no longer exists. So, oh my gosh, that's false. It's just false. And our teachers should not be telling our kids this. So this goes back to what I mentioned before about how, regardless of what we say or don't say to our children, our kids are receiving messaging about racism from other sources, particularly from their school.
That's a very conflicting message, because kids are really holding a teacher from an educational institution at a high standard.
They're role models. They're authority figures. They're people who know. So yes, that's like you said, it causes conflict. And getting back to the topic of Juneteenth. So this year, Juneteenth was celebrated in a way that it was never celebrated before. Several people reached out to me on Facebook to tell me that they had never heard of Juneteenth before, and neither had their kids. And their kids are, young kids, elementary, middle, high school. That should not be the case. You're learning about all of American history in school. We must hold our schools accountable for teaching historically accurate and complete American history. Juneteenth is not a part of Black culture. It's not a part of African American history. It's part of American history. And we need to hold our schools accountable for teaching this. And my son, who is now 20, he went to Naperville 204 schools his entire career. He went to Indian Prairie Preschool for 2 years, Brooks Elementary, Granger Middle School, and Metea Valley High School. So that's 15 years in 204 schools. And in those 15 years, he had one African American teacher. I actually thought a couple of days ago that it was 0, but my husband reminded me he did have one in Granger. But still, 15 years and one teacher. Now, I'm not saying that these schools didn't none of them had other teachers. They did. But the fact of the matter is that it's kind of unfortunate, bad, that many kids can go through schools in our area and across the country and never have an African American teacher, and in general not have many teachers who are of a variety of ethnicities and races. And, you know, teachers are role models, and our kids should have African American role models.
Mm-hmm.
That helps our kids understand that African Americans, just like white Americans and other ethnicities, can have these roles of power and of authority, that they can teach us, that they are no different than anybody else. Helps them have that positive attitude about African Americans. And other than that, all students benefit from learning in a culturally rich environment.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to hold our schools accountable. So we need to ask our children's teachers, principals, school districts, how are they addressing the issue of race? And it should be more than a single assembly during Black History Month. It should be more than a single lesson, ahead of Martin Luther King's birthday. What books, videos, posters, etc., are being used? Is the staff racially diverse? Who is the school inviting in for assemblies and special programs? Is the curriculum historically accurate? Does your school encourage an open dialogue about racism? Does your school prejudge the experience of its African American students? These are just some of the questions that we need to ask. So to summarize, the 4 strategies are: model anti-racism for your kids, talk to your kids about racism, take advantage of resources, and hold your child's school accountable.
Thank you so much for that wonderful summary. And I think these are all extremely important topics that people are going to be continuing to think about and integrating, especially as we're planning to go back to school. And this is probably going to be a unique transition back to school. So a lot of change is already in the works. So it's kind of, I think, launching and thinking about these additional topics that you bring up today is something that it's important for parents to be asking their school districts. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, Stacey, before we kind of run short on time, is you have a superpowers community, and that is where kind of, your guided children's journals are part of what you have developed as a superpowers community. And I really like that you are such a positive influence on this when you're thinking about diversity and multiculturalism and inclusion. Can you tell us about the guided journals and the superpowers community briefly? And also, my understanding is that you are creating a new journal on racial diversity.
Yes. So I have a series of guided journals, and they're called My Superpowers. And I use the imagery of superheroes throughout what I do, because I want kids to view themselves as the heroes of their own lives and to find and embrace their own superpowers, what it is about them that's special and unique. And one of the journals I have right here is called Why is Different Awesome? And this particular book is all about, again, kids celebrating their unique qualities and embracing differences, whether it is race, physical ability, nationality, or whatever. It's all about inclusivity and respect for others. I have on Facebook a group that's called My Superpowers Community. And if you go to Facebook, just type in My Superpowers Community, and you can find it that way. And in that group, it's all about empowering our kids, helping our kids become more confident. I do have a section called a unit that is just for resources to help teach our kids about racism. So I invite you all to join that group and check out those resources. The resources has books, articles, blogs, videos. This video, I will put that in there as well. And I also have a social emotional learning program for elementary schools, which is about inclusivity. And Dr. Konick mentioned my next book, my next guided journal, which I will have toward the end of September, is all about racism, diversity, and anti-racism. So please, like my Facebook page, join my group, My Superpowers Community, and you will receive information about that book, my other books, and other resources.
And we'll certainly post some of the resources that you'd like to share with us today for our viewers. We'll post that on the Facebook feed that goes along with this particular video. And then we'll also have on our website, which is konickandassociates.com, we will have posted some additional resources that we have gathered, not only for this particular talk, but for other parents generally as a resource community. And Stacey, I would like to direct people to your Facebook page as well. And also, is there a website that they can go to if they're interested in learning more about your journals and looking for the upcoming journal about anti-racism?
Yes, my website is staceymdesign.com. That's Stacey with an EY, mdesign.com. And there's a link there called Guided Journals. And my Facebook page is Stacey M Design.
Great. And so we will keep those resources posted on the link to this video. Yes. And is there anything else that you would like to add? I think this has been a wonderful dynamic talk. If people have additional questions, you can post them on the feed and we will certainly find a way to get back to you. And thank you so much, Stacey. Is there anything else you'd like to add that might be an additional resource for parents?
Well, as I mentioned, I do have that program, my social emotional learning program. Is called My Superpowers, and it will be available as an e-learning resource for those who are choosing to homeschool this fall. It is also available for elementary schools. So if you contact me through my website or my Facebook page or my group, I can certainly give information to you about that.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all of your ideas and resources. And we will look forward to the posting the additional information. Please feel free to post questions on our site, and we look forward to seeing you for future series in our parenting education seminars. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Take care, Stacey.
Bye-bye.